Before we begin, take a moment to support the channel. If you're interested in real crime stories, unsolved disappearances, and cases that still raise questions today, make sure to subscribe. Don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps keep these stories alive. Now, let's begin.
In the early summer of 2011, the historic city of Macon, Georgia, was buzzing with graduation ceremonies. At Mercer University's Walter F. George School of Law, 27-year-old Lauren Giddings was on the cusp of a promising future. She had recently taken the Georgia bar exam and was awaiting her results while working at a local law firm. Described by friends as brilliant, kind, and vibrant, Lauren lived in a ground-floor apartment at the Barrister Hall complex on College Street, a building popular with law students directly across from the university. The last confirmed sighting of Lauren Giddings was on the evening of Saturday, June 25, 2011. She was seen by neighbors returning to her apartment after grocery shopping. The following day, Sunday, June 26th, she failed to show up for a planned lunch date with a friend. Calls to her cell phone went straight to voicemail. Concern grew steadily throughout the day. By Monday, June 27th, when she did not report for work, her coworkers and friends knew something was gravely wrong. They contacted the Macon Police Department to file a missing persons report. Officers conducting a welfare check at her apartment found the door locked. There were no immediate signs of forced entry. With permission from the property manager, they entered. Inside, they found Lauren's purse, wallet, keys, and cell phone charger. Her car was parked. The Macon police, aided by the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, GBI, began a methodical process. They interviewed neighbors, friends, and colleagues. One of the first people they spoke to was Stephen McDaniel, another Mercer law student who lived in the apartment directly above Lauren's. McDaniel was cooperative. He told investigators that he had seen Lauren on Saturday evening and had briefly spoken to her. He stated he was one of the last people to see her. He expressed concern for her well-being and offered no immediate information that raised suspicion. As the search expanded, investigators examined security camera footage from the apartment complex and surrounding businesses. They processed Lauren's apartment for forensic evidence. While the initial sweep did not reveal overt signs of violence, the complete absence of Lauren and the personal items she would never voluntarily leave behind pointed to a serious crime. The timeline from Saturday night to Sunday morning became the critical focus. With no digital footprint, no phone or bank activity, after Saturday night, the likelihood of an abduction or murder grew stronger. The police held a press conference, releasing Lauren's photo and description to the public, urging anyone with information to come forward. The community, especially the tight-knit Mercer Law School, was gripped by fear and uncertainty. The search for Lauren Giddings was underway, but the most shocking discovery was yet to come, and it would arrive in the most gruesome manner possible. The search for Lauren Giddings entered a grim and definitive phase on Thursday, June 30th, 2011. A maintenance worker at the Barrister Hall Apartments was checking the property's dumpsters. In a large, rolling trash container located in a gated alley behind the complex, he made a horrific discovery: a black plastic trash bag containing human torso, later identified as that of a white female. The Macon police and GBI were immediately called to secure what was now a homicide crime scene. The torso was naked and showed signs of dismemberment. The discovery location, mere feet from Lauren's own apartment, strongly suggested the killer lived nearby or was intimately familiar with the property. The investigation instantly intensified. The alley and all dumpsters within a wide radius were sealed off as crime scenes. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Over the next several days, the search yielded more gruesome finds. In other dumpsters and trash receptacles in the same general area, investigators recovered additional human remains in separate bags, including limbs. All were confirmed through forensic examination to belong to Lauren Giddings. The method of disposal, crude, localized, and using the victim's own apartment complex dumpsters, pointed to an offender who acted in haste, with limited means, and perhaps a shocking level of arrogance or carelessness. Throughout the initial search of the dumpsters, a curious figure was present, Stephen McDaniel. He was observed by law enforcement lingering near the crime scene tape, watching the activity intently. He was not just a bystander. He actively inserted himself. In a moment that would later become infamous, a local news crew from WGXA interviewed McDaniel about his missing neighbor. Standing in the parking lot of their apartment complex, with police lights, he spoke of Lauren in the past tense, speculated about what might have happened to her, and described hearing a scream on the night she disappeared, a detail he had not previously provided to police. His demeanor was flat, his effect unnatural. The interview was broadcast and quickly drew public attention for its unsettling tone. Investigators took formal note of McDaniel's behavior. He had been among the last to see Lauren. He lived directly above her. He was present at the discovery of her remains, and his television interview raised questions. They brought him in for further questioning. During these interviews, McDaniel maintained his story about hearing a scream and reiterated his concern. However, detectives began to identify inconsistencies in his timeline and statements. They also obtained and reviewed security footage from the apartment complex. The footage from the night of Lauren's disappearance and the early morning hours thereafter would become critical. It showed McDaniel entering and exiting the building at unusual times, and captured him carrying large, heavy-looking bags to the dumpster area during the time frame when the remains were likely disposed of. While forensic teams processed the remains in the dumpster areas, other agents executed a search warrant on Stephen McDaniel's apartment. With Stephen McDaniel now the prime suspect, investigators from the Macon Police Department and the GBI planned a strategic interrogation. They invited him to the police station on July 1, 2011, under the pretense of reviewing his statement and helping to clarify the timeline. McDaniel agreed and was placed in an interview room. What followed was a recorded interrogation that showcased a methodical dismantling of his alibi and culminated in a dramatic, emotionless confession. For hours, detectives engaged McDaniel in seemingly casual conversation, allowing him to reiterate his story about hearing a scream and his activities on the night of June 25th. They then began to gently present inconsistencies. They showed him still images from the apartment security footage, pointing out his movements in the early morning hours of June 26th, times when he had previously claimed to be asleep. They questioned why he was seen on video carrying large, heavy bags to the dumpster area. McDaniel's explanations grew increasingly convoluted and hesitant. The interrogators then changed tactics, appealing to his stated desire to become a lawyer. They suggested that perhaps something had gone terribly wrong accidentally, a fight that escalated, and that now was the time to explain his side of the story before forensic evidence spoke for itself. They emphasized the weight of the physical evidence they were gathering from the dumpsters and his apartment. The pressure in the room became palpable. After approximately 6 hours of questioning, Stephen McDaniel stated that on the night of June 25th, he entered Lauren Giddings's ground floor apartment through her unlocked patio door. He claimed he had done this before, while she was out, to watch her sleep, an admission of prior voyeuristic behavior. On this night, he said he was wearing gloves and carrying a knife. He described approaching her bed, where a struggle ensued. He confessed to stabbing Lauren Giddings to death in her own bed. He then detailed the aftermath, He stated he dismembered her body in the bathtub of her apartment to facilitate disposal. He described using a handheld saw. He placed the body parts in large black plastic trash bags. He then cleaned the apartment in an attempt to remove forensic evidence. Over the next several nights, under the cover of darkness, he transported the bags from her apartment to the communal dumpsters behind the building, as captured on the security footage. He also admitted to disposing of the murder weapon and the saw in a separate location. Following this confession, Stephen McDaniel was formally placed under arrest for the murder of Lauren Giddings. He was charged with malice murder, felony murder, burglary, and aggravated assault. The confession provided the why that had been missing, a stated sexual obsession that turned lethal. It also explained the how, aligning perfectly with the discovery of the dismembered remains in the dumpsters and the lack of significant blood evidence in Lauren's cleaned apartment. The case moved from investigation to prosecution, with McDaniel's own words forming the core of the state's case against him. Following his detailed confession, Stephen McDaniel was held without bond at the Bibb County Jail. The prosecution, led by Bibb County District Attorney David Cook, began building a case that would rely heavily on McDaniel's own words, the security footage, and the forensic evidence recovered from the dumpsters and the victim's apartment. The defense, led by court-appointed attorneys Franklin Hogue and Floyd Buford, faced the daunting task of defending a client who had confessed on video to a brutal and calculated murder. One of the first major legal steps was a series of pretrial hearings to determine the admissibility of McDaniel's confession. The defense filed motions to suppress the statement, arguing that McDaniels will have been overborne by lengthy interrogation, that he was sleep-deprived, and that he had not intelligently waived his Miranda rights. They contended the confession was involuntary and therefore should not be heard by a jury. The prosecution argued that McDaniel, a law student who had studied criminal procedure, was fully aware of his rights, had initiated the confession himself, and had spoken in a coherent and detailed manner. After hearing testimony from the interrogating officers and reviewing the tape, Superior Court Judge S. Philip Brown ruled in 2012 that the confession was voluntary and admissible at trial. This was a critical blow to the defense strategy. With the confession deemed admissible, the defense's options narrowed significantly. They shifted focus to McDaniel's mental state. Defense attorneys ordered a comprehensive psychological evaluation to assess his competency to stand trial and to explore the possibility of an insanity defense. Forensic psychologists evaluated McDaniel over several months. While the full reports remained sealed, the defense ultimately announced they would not be pursuing an insanity defense. This decision meant the trial would not revolve around whether McDaniel understood right from wrong at the time of the crime, but rather on the facts of the case as presented by the prosecution. The pretrial phase was also marked by the grim task of confirming the cause of death. Due to the state of the remains, the initial autopsy could not determine an exact cause. However, based on McDaniel's confession of stabbing Lauren Giddings and the lack of other evident trauma to the recovered remains, the medical examiner listed the cause of death as homicidal violence of undetermined means. This was not unusual in dismemberment cases and did not weaken the prosecution's case, which was built on the confession and the act of dismemberment itself. As the trial date approached, the prosecution signaled it would seek the death penalty, citing the murder as outrageously or wantonly vile, horrible, or inhuman due to the dismemberment and disposal of the body. This elevated the stakes and ensured the trial would be bifurcated. A guilt phase followed, if necessary, by a penalty phase. The defense continued to file motions on various evidentiary issues, but the core of the case was set. The state had a video confession and the defense had little ground to dispute the fundamental facts of the killing. The question for the upcoming trial became less about what happened and more about what legal outcome would follow. Facing overwhelming evidence, Stephen McDaniel's defense team entered into plea negotiations with the prosecution. On September 11, 2014, just weeks before his trial was set to begin, McDaniel appeared before Bibb County Superior Court Judge S. Philip Brown. In a negotiated agreement, he pleaded guilty to the charges of malice murder, felony murder, and aggravated assault in the death of Lauren Giddings. By pleading guilty, he avoided a trial and the possibility of the death penalty, which the prosecution had been seeking. During the plea hearing, the state presented a factual basis for the plea, recounting McDaniel's confession and the evidence. McDaniel affirmed the accuracy of the state's recitation. Lauren Giddings's family members were present and given the opportunity to address the court. Her father, John Giddings, delivered a victim impact statement, speaking of his daughter's stolen future and the family's enduring pain. He stated, "We are serving a life sentence without Lauren." Judge Brown accepted the plea. On the malice murder charge, he sentenced Stephen McDaniel to life in prison without the possibility of parole. On the additional charges, he imposed a consecutive sentence of 10 years for aggravated assault. The sentences ensured McDaniel would spend the rest of his life in the Georgia Department of Corrections. He was remanded to the Georgia Diagnostic and Classification Prison in Jackson. Following his sentencing, McDaniel filed a motion to withdraw his guilty plea in 2015, claiming his attorneys had pressured him into accepting the deal. The court denied this motion, finding he had entered the plea knowingly and voluntarily. He later filed an appeal, which was also denied by the Georgia Supreme Court in 2016, leaving his life sentence firmly in place. The murder of Lauren Giddings left a profound impact on the Mercer University community and the city of Macon. In her memory, her family established a scholarship fund for Mercer Law School students. The case remains a stark reminder of hidden dangers and the tragic consequences of predatory violence. Lauren is remembered not for the brutality of her death, but for her intellect, kindness, and the promising legal career that was tragically cut short. The official resolution provided a measure of justice, but as her father expressed, it could not fill the void left by her absence. In loving memory of Lauren Giddings, Lauren was more than a name in a tragic story. She was a daughter, a friend, and a young woman with hopes, determination, and a future she was building step by step. Her life was marked by intelligence, ambition, and kindness toward others. Though her time was cut short, the impact of who she was continues to be felt by those who knew her and by those who hear her story. This video is not only a reflection on what happened, but a moment to remember Lauren for who she truly was. May her memory be honored with compassion, awareness, and the resolve to never forget her.
If you want to keep uncovering the mysteries that linger in the shadows, don't forget to subscribe. Your likes help these cases reach more investigators, and your comments might just be the clue that leads to the truth. Stay curious and stay vigilant.